Let's unravel the story. The opening scene shows a blurry greenish image, resembling a recording of a garden or a house's backyard. But what's really happening here? The scene then shifts to Ellison, a former famous writer, who is moving into a new house in Pennsylvania with his family. As they settle in, Ellison notices his youngest daughter, Ashley, painting on the wall instead of helping unpack. It turns out that Ashley is upset about the sudden move, which forced her to leave her friends behind. To reassure her, Ellison promises that they'll move to a bigger city once he writes a great book and regains his past success. Meanwhile, outside the house, Sheriff Fred warns Ellison not to dig too deep into the mysterious Stevenson family murder case. He insists that such cases shouldn't be commercialized or turned into books. However, driven by curiosity, Ellison refuses to listen. He is determined to uncover the truth behind the brutal crime and the mysterious disappearance of the youngest Stevenson child, Stephanie. Seeing that his warning is ignored, Fred simply says, "Sometimes, knowing less is better." After Fred leaves, Ellison's wife, who overheard the conversation, questions him about the house's history. It turns out Ellison had been keeping a dark secret. This very house was where the Stevenson family was murdered in the opening scene. Later, while storing things in the attic, Ellison discovers an old box filled with vintage videotapes and a film projector. What could be on those tapes? That night during dinner, Ellison tells Ashley and her older brother Trevor that they are not allowed to enter his study. He hopes that by setting clear rules, his kids will feel more comfortable in their new home. As the night deepens, Ellison finally begins his investigation. He decides to play one of the old tapes he found. The first video shows Stephanie and her family happily spending time together, a seemingly normal home video. But then, the footage suddenly takes a horrifying turn. Stephanie's entire family is executed, their heads covered with sacks. After the massacre, Stephanie is nowhere to be found. As he sips his tea, Ellison wonders who could have recorded this chilling footage. His curiosity grows, so he plays another tape labeled Barbecue Party. This footage shows the Marcos family enjoying a vacation by the lake, having a barbecue together. But just like the Stevenson family, the Marcos family meets a gruesome fate. They are burned alive inside their car by an unknown figure. Shockingly, Ellison realizes that the youngest child of the Marcos family also mysteriously disappeared. With his obsession growing, Ellison prepares to watch the next tape, titled Pool Party. But before he can press play, he hears a strange noise coming from another room. Suddenly, Trevor starts screaming hysterically and bursts out of a box, seemingly in agony. After he calms down, his parents are left baffled by what just happened. The next morning, Trevor claims he remembers nothing about the night before. To him, it just felt like he had fallen asleep as usual. Assuming it was just sleepwalking, Ellison brushes it off and gets his kids ready for school. Once the house is quiet again, he resumes watching the pool party video. The footage starts normally, showing a family having fun by their backyard pool. But then, a shadowy figure appears in the background, an eerie, grim Reaper-like presence. Ellison rewinds the tape multiple times, trying to make sense of what he just saw. Suddenly, the film burns right at the moment the figure is caught on camera. Intrigued, Ellison attempts to convert the tapes into digital format to preserve them. Unfortunately, the most crucial part, the figure's face, was completely lost in the process. Just then, Ellison hears his wife yelling at Trevor. She angrily tells him that Trevor got in trouble on his first day of school for drawing 4 people being hanged on a whiteboard using a permanent marker. Already overwhelmed, Ellison doesn't react much to the news and tells her to handle it. That night, Ellison continued watching a film reel titled Sleep Forever. The footage showed a disturbing scene of a family being tied up on their bed. Feeling overwhelmed, Ellison started searching for clues in the recordings. From the footage, he discovered that the incident took place in 1998 and involved the Miller family. Just like the previous cases, their youngest child, Chris, mysteriously vanished and was presumed kidnapped by the perpetrator. As Ellison tried to dig deeper, the house lights suddenly went out. In the pitch darkness, he heard strange noises coming from the attic. While searching for the source, he stumbled upon a box containing eerie drawings. Each drawing depicted 5 different families who had been brutally murdered. But what caught his attention the most was a shadowy figure appearing in every single drawing. This figure, known as the boogeyman, seemed to be present at each crime scene. The next morning, Deputy James visited Ellison and asked if anything unusual had happened. Ellison admitted that he had been hearing footsteps in the attic lately. Sensing James's skepticism, Ellison invited him into his study to show him the strange findings, convinced that the supernatural disturbances began after he started investigating the Stevenson family case. Impressed by Ellison's dedication, James shared additional information. During the Stevenson investigation, forensic experts discovered traces of a paralyzing agent in the victims' bodies. Intrigued by the case, James took notes and categorized the incidents as follows: the pool party massacre, 1966, the barbecue incident, 1979, and the Sleep Forever case, 1998. Later, Ellison tried to map out the boogeyman's appearance using the clues from the drawings. He realized a chilling pattern. The boogeyman had been present at every gruesome crime scene. Then, James gave Ellison a critical piece of information. Every murdered family had previously lived in the house of the victims before them. This meant the Stevenson family once lived in the Miller house before they vanished. The same pattern had happened to all the previous families. That night, Ellison experienced something terrifying. While investigating, he saw ghostly hands reaching out, pulling him as he nearly fell from the attic. Later that night, the projector in his study turned on by itself. Ellison rushed in, only to see the boogeyman lurking in the bushes outside. In a panic, he grabbed a baseball bat. But just as he was about to investigate, a large black dog appeared, growling at him. Suddenly, the dog turned and ran away, terrified of something behind Ellison. When he turned around, he saw 5 ghostly children standing there. But who were they? Amidst all the eerie occurrences, Ellison's wife sensed something was terribly wrong and urged him to move out immediately. However, Ellison, completely absorbed in the case, ignored her warnings. He was convinced that his book would be groundbreaking and refused to leave. Still, he promised his wife that once his work was finished, they would move away. Reluctantly, she agreed. The following night, Ellison played the final reel, titled Lawn Mowing. The horrifying footage pushed him to the edge, and he abruptly shut off the projector. Desperate for answers, Ellison contacted Professor Jonas, an expert in ancient mysteries, and sent him the strange symbol he had found. Jonas revealed that the symbol belonged to Buhul, a Babylonian demon known as the devourer of children's souls. Buhul manipulates children, influencing them to commit sinister acts before trapping their souls in another dimension. Upon hearing this, Ellison had a horrifying realization. The missing children, including Stephanie, had become trapped in the boogeyman's realm, forever enslaved. The next morning, Ellison was startled awake by the sound of the projector turning on by itself in the storage room. As he rushed over, a ghostly figure of Stephanie suddenly emerged from the shadows. As we can see, the spirits of the murdered children were growing restless, trying to drive Ellison out of the house. In a panic, Ellison searched frantically for Trevor and Ashley. Finally, after locking all the doors and windows, he decided to sleep on the sofa, keeping watch, knowing that something sinister was lurking in the house. The next day, while Ellison was writing, he suddenly stopped when he heard his wife yelling at Ashley. When he arrived, he was shocked to see Ashley drawing a picture of Stephanie on the wall. Ashley then revealed that Stephanie had lived in this house before her entire family was murdered near the tree in the backyard. Hearing this, Ellison's wife, feeling deceived, immediately took him to their bedroom. Once inside, she confronted him about his reckless decision to move their family into a house with such a dark history. She was convinced that all the terrifying disturbances they had experienced were connected to it. Realizing he could no longer hide the truth, Ellison apologized and promised that they would leave immediately if things became too dangerous. However, for now, he asked his wife to be patient, but this only made her more frustrated, as she felt that Ellison cared more about his career than their children's safety. That night, Ellison was abruptly woken up by the sound of the projector turning on. Annoyed and exhausted, he got up to check. The noise seemed to be coming from the attic, so he forced himself to investigate. But as strange occurrences continued, Ellison decided to burn all the tapes and evidence he had collected. Hearing the commotion, his wife woke up and rushed to him. He told her they needed to pack their things and leave the house immediately. While driving away, Ellison told his family not to bring up anything about the house again, as he had decided to abandon his plan to write a book about the Stevenson family case. However, during the heavy rain, Ellison received an email from the professor, who had sent horrifying images of Boogle's demonic rituals. When Ellison called him, the professor explained that the symbol Ellison had found was a gateway for Boogle to enter the human world. Through this gateway, Boogle could manipulate his victims into doing his bidding. Panicked, Ellison asked if there was a way to close the portal, but the professor admitted that he hadn't found any solution. Shocked, Ellison went to store some of their belongings, but was horrified to discover that the box of burned tapes had somehow reappeared. Inside the box, he found an envelope labeled Extended, containing additional footage of all the murders he had seen before. Just then, he received a call from Deputy James, who angrily scolded him for moving out. According to the records, every victim was always killed in their new home after previously living in a house where a massacre had occurred. Realizing what this meant, James apologized, because it was now highly likely that Ellison and his family would be the next victims. Ellison was completely horrified when he finally understood the truth. The missing children from each case were actually the ones responsible for the murders. Before he could process it all, Ellison suddenly felt dizzy after drinking the coffee his daughter had made for him. As it turned out, his daughter, who had already been influenced by Boogle, had drugged the entire family. Before committing her horrifying act, Ashley recorded everything, just like the other children had done before her. After brutally murdering her entire family, Ashley was taken away by the spirits of the other children. But before leaving, she left behind a disturbing drawing. And just like that, Boogeyman's collection of films grew, with a new edition titled The Painting on the Wall. Terrifying, isn't it? Anyone who lives in that cursed house will eventually fall victim to its sinister cycle. The boogeyman manipulates the children into committing unspeakable acts, while the spirits of past victims torment the family, forcing them to move. If the family resists, the boogeyman himself will intervene, terrorizing them until they have no choice but to flee. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.